Hello everyone, welcome to the second episode of Runescape Politics, and in this episode we're going to be talking about the rare item polls that have been going around. And the first thing I want to really talk about is the fact that I don't think that this should be called a rare item poll, and the main reason why is because all the items we're talking about, Christmas hats, Halloween masks, party hats, all these things are not actually rare items. They're rare right now, but they were never rare when they were released. All of those items were actually extremely common items. If you were online during Christmas of 2001, you would have had party hats, Christmas crackers everywhere. It was not a difficult thing to get. And for that reason, I think it's kind of wrong to be calling this a rare item poll. And for many of the same reasons why they wouldn't be considered rare items, even if we introduced them into 2007scape. They're not going to be rare items, they're simply going to be discontinued items, and I think that's what we should be calling it in the future. So, the fact that no original items were rare, really, of all the discontinued items that are currently in the Evolution of Combat, there are only two that I would actually consider to be rare, and those two are the ones that were actually released from the Squeal of Fortune, so the fish mask and the Christmas tree hat. Those I would actually consider to be rare because you can't go out and get it from the ground or get it from other easy means around the game. You could only get them from a very small chance of the Squeal of Fortune, or in the case of the Christmas hat, really the purple present was all it was. So a really rare chance for the purple present from the Squeal, or a really rare chance from a monster drop. So for those reasons, those are the only two that I would really consider rare items, and it's kind of interesting to think about it that way because those are probably the two that are least rare when we think about the Evolution of Combat. There's probably more Christmas hats, certainly more Christmas hats, than there are party hats or Halloween masks. And so I kind of wanted to make sure that when we go down when we're continuing on this episode, that we don't continue to call them rare items, because I think that's kind of missing the point. And I think it's going to be extremely difficult to institute rare items that are actually fair into 2007scape, and that's one of the main problems I'm going to have going throughout this episode. However, I want to make sure that I remain somewhat fair. I want to make sure that I have both sides of the argument, because there are a lot of people that think that rare items should be introduced. As of right now, I personally think that they should be introduced, but I don't think they should be rare. I think that the poll that we had recently, the number 3 rare item poll, was actually a really good list of questions in the sense that most of those made it not rare and made it so that every player can get them if they wanted it for in relatively easy terms. So you can go out and do an emote in the Draenor Manor for a Halloween mask. Things like these would make it so that if you wanted a Halloween mask for the looks, then you can have it. But it wouldn't affect the economy or the way that any of us interact, or the fact that it would be considered a rare item. It would simply, at that point, it wouldn't even be a discontinued item. It would just be a cosmetic item. And I think that's more the road that we should be taking. So as we continue, I first want to talk about why we would not want to have rare items in the game, and that's for several reasons. So one of the main reasons I don't want discontinued items being introduced into 2007scape would be because it gives an unfair advantage to gold farmers, botters, and people who have a real-life economic advantage. So for instance, if we were going to make it so that all players get the choice of one rare, in which case you would actually have rare items. They would be considered rare because there's only so much that could happen with them, and there's only so many ways to get them. However, I think that having it so that each player gets it obviously means that you can create multiple accounts, and if you have the means to do so, then you would go ahead and do that. You'd pile up on party hats, Halloween masks, all these different things, and then down the road, you'll actually make up for your investment. So your $5 in real life money could turn into millions of gold, and that could actually end up being advantageous if you're trying to make money. So rather than just buying 10 mil of gold, you can buy another account, get a Halloween mask, and then down the road, go ahead and sell it. And I think that that's really a main reason why I don't think we should allow it, is because it's giving a huge advantage to people who are basically willing to cheat the game. The only reason they would be doing it is to get the rare items, and there's going to be an overflowing of rare items. Another thing is that it'll encourage real-life trading, as well as trade between the EOC and 2007scape, and it'll force people to play on the day of release. So when I say that it forces people to do real life trading and trading between the EOC and 2007 Scape, is because as the game is right now in EOC, really the only thing that people go for are the discontinued items, because there's really not that much that much else at the end game. They're all you would want if you're trying to be the ultimate RuneScaper would be a party hat to go ahead and wear around to show that you have all the money. And so for that reason, it's going to really encourage people to rush for that sort of stuff. If they don't have a full party hat set, then they're going to want to get that. And they're going to, most people will do any means necessary to get such a thing. And especially at the beginning of when we release these discontinued items, they're going to be relatively inexpensive, and it's going to make people want to buy them even more, because they're going to be thinking $5 for a white party hat. Think about how much money a white party hat is in the EOC. That would cost hundreds of dollars. And so because of that, people are really going to be encouraged to invest real life money so that they have an economic advantage in RuneScape later down the road. And another thing that I think is really bad is the idea of forcing people to play during release. So a lot of people back in 2001, 2002 were slightly angry because for two reasons. One reason was that they didn't realize that they'd be discontinued items and that they'd be so expensive down the road. And so simply you'd have a full party hat set in your bank that's 6 spaces. And you don't really want 6 spaces of your bank taken up by cosmetic items. And so a lot of people were dropping their party hats, dropping their Halloween masks, thinking that they would no longer be valuable. However, down the road, they realized that they're extremely valuable, and those people ended up being extremely angry because they ended up dropping these items that ended up being extremely valuable. And so for that reason, you're really forcing people. If you say, during this week, we're going to allow people to get discontinued items, and then after that, there's going to be no more of them, and the only way to get them will be trading and buying them from other players. If you say that, you're basically forcing everyone to log on to that game during the week. I mean, most reasonable RuneScape players, if they intend to play this game for a long period of time, it's going to be really hard to not log on during that week. And for people with jobs, for people with real life, things that they have to take care of, that's a huge problem, because you're basically forcing people to play a video game in a sense. I mean, it's obviously not forcing them, but they're going to be in an extreme disadvantage compared to everyone else who goes ahead and stocks up on these rare items at the beginning. And so I think that's a real problem, because I don't think in any other game you would create a situation where you're basically forcing people to log on during that week. I mean, the closest thing I could think of to that would be double experience weekends in certain games, like Call of Duty. They have like double experience weekends where if you log on, all the experience you get will be doubled. But even things like that, that's somewhat trivial in the sense, RuneScape's done some double XP weekends as well. And I know for a lot of people, they feel forced to log on during that weekend. For instance, if they're stocking up on summoning, 99 summoning is one of the main reasons why people love double XP weekends, because they're able to get twice as much experience from their charms. And so even though they might only have charms to get to 88, because of double XP, they might be able to get to 92, 93. And so for that reason, I think it's a really bad idea to sort of force people to play the game at certain points. Another thing it'll do is stop people from playing. It'll make people have an incentive to stop playing and then continue playing further down the road. So for instance, right now, if I was going for 99 range and I wanted to have fun PKing, and they just released rare discontinued items and I got my hands on a couple, there's a huge incentive for me to stop playing the game, go have fun playing other games, come back later down the road when these items are expensive and be able to buy my way to all the stats I want and then be able to PK like I want. Just take, a few month break. And I don't think that's very fair to the people who are actually playing the game, because that's giving them an advantage against people who actually every day log on and do their work. And so I think adding these items would actually create an incentive for people to hold off for a while. Well, right now I don't have very much money, but if I wait a few months for these discontinued items to gain wealth, then I'll be able to go ahead and buy all the things I want. And so I think that's a huge problem as well. The last 3 problems that I'd like to touch on would be it encourages scamming, merching, hacking, and luring. So as for merching, that's probably the least of my worries of those 4. The The reason why is because merching, I think, is actually a pretty good thing in the game. I think it's important that we have a economy of people who are willing to buy things for low, sell them for high, and sort of maintain prices. However, merchanting at high-level rare items could create a huge incentive to cheat people out of items, to scam people, and to do that sort of thing. So scamming is an obvious reason why rare items should probably not be introduced. Scamming is a huge reason why people have lost extreme amounts of banks, and while a lot of people make the argument that people play RuneScape to get their rares, there's a counter to that in the sense that if people lose their rares, they'll stop playing. And that's a huge problem, I think, because there's been extreme amounts of people who have played in the past, got their yellow party hat, been extremely stoked, and then got lured by someone and they lost their yellow party hat. That makes people very angry, and that's the sort of thing that makes people quit a game. So hacking and luring are also two huge problems, because you're basically creating a situation where these people are extremely high value targets. You know, if you see an account with a full party hat set, you're going to want to get that full party hat set, and there's a lot of people that are willing to do whatever it takes to get that. And so these are a couple of reasons why I don't think that rares should be implemented into the game, as well as it hurts the economy. I mean, a lot of people say it helps the economy, and a lot of people say it hurts the economy. The main reason why it hurts the economy is because these are not things that people are going to be getting every day. And because of that, it's creating an incentive for people to stock up on them right away. It also makes it so that people aren't actually playing the game. I mean, it creates a high-value item, but the high-value items don't even have a purpose. And so you're having a bunch of people running around in cosmetic items and staking each other and creating this high-value list in which people can create massive amounts of wealth from a very small starting point, especially because we're assuming we're all going to be getting rares. It's going to be very hard to implement rares into this game in a case where not everyone gets one, and that they're very hard to get. And so for that reason, I think that rares would hurt the economy for many reasons, and would give incentives for people to do other bad activities to try to get their hands on them. So with that said, I think there are a few other reasons why I think we should allow rares to come back into the game, and I'll give you those. So one of the main reasons why I think that rares would be a good thing for 2007scape would be it gives something for people to work for. And I think that that's a very strong thing. I think a lot of people, especially skillers, merely play the RuneScape for that attraction, to try to get the really extremely wealthy items and to show off their wealth, show what they've done, and show, have something to prove for their hard work. However, I don't think that these rare items, especially the ones that are discontinued in EOC, are the way to go about this. For instance, right now you have Third Age Plate Body that can function pretty well as, all the Third Age stuff can function pretty well as rare items. And those are actual rare items, not discontinued items that were common when they were released but are now rare because they're no longer able to enter the game. But they're actually rare items in the sense that it's a very low chance for you to get them from rewards. And so I think that's what people should be working for. If they're going for high level, high value sort of items to show their wealth, I think that's how you would do it. You would show it through actual rare items, because it's not going to be rare items when these discontinued items are first released. They're not going to be rare. You're going to see everyone running around with party hats, Halloween masks. It's not going to be a rare thing. Think about how long it took for rare items to actually gain value. I mean, right now you still have the fish mask that was released in the summer of 2012. It's about to be a year since release, and those things are barely breaking 2 mil in many cases. And so for that reason, it takes a very long time for discontinued items to sort of gain wealth. And there's going to be a lot of people that are going to have to delete and sell and break rare items to try to push the economy upward and try to gain value on them. And so for that reason, I think that if you want something to work for, there's plenty other ways to work for stuff. There's plenty other things to work for. And I think it's kind of silly to say that if there's no party hats, then there's nothing for me to work for, and, what's the point? I think there's a lot of other ways in which you can flaunt your wealth. Another thing is it'll give an advantage to original players, players that started, in the case of Party Hats, it's the players who started back in, 2001, 2002 for all those rare items like Easter eggs, Halloween masks, all that sort of stuff. But in 2007, you could translate that over. So you could say all the people that started, in May or June of 2007 Scape, when it goes to being, 2014, 2015, you could show, hey, I was around when these servers first started. And I think that is a pretty cool thing. However, I don't think that it's necessarily the way that we should be going about it. I don't think that you need to have a very similar way of showing originality in EOC and in 2007 Scape, because Jagex realized that it is cool to be able to have these cosmetic items, these event items, and to be able to show that, hey, I played during Christmas of 2001. But the problem is most of the people that have these items now didn't even play back in 2001, and in fact, many of the people who played back in 2001 have since quit. And so you have a situation where, although these items are supposed to show originality and show, the people that were part of pioneering the game, it really doesn't have that purpose anymore. Really, the only things that show that you've been playing the game consistently are the non-tradable rare items. Discontinued items, sorry, not rare items. The non-tradable ones, like the rubber chicken, all the marionettes, those sort of things actually show that you're around, because there's no way to trade them between accounts, get them to newer accounts, and that sort of thing. So if we were trying to show that, hey, we're the original people that started 2007 Scape, we're the pioneers, it's not a good way to do that by implementing tradable rare items. It's not going to get the job done for that purpose. The last thing that I think people would argue for rare items, why we should implement them, would be to create a high value, item market, as well as staking items. So you want to make sure that, as in my last video when I talked on obsolescence, it shows that there's going to be a point where most items are going to be very, very cheap in this game, and it's going to be very hard to maintain high value items. However, I think that treasure trails is actually a really good way of doing this. Although I feel bad forcing people to do treasure trails for money, because that's really the only way you can get these sort of things. That's the way that we need to be going about it. Very, very low chances and very hard to get. And that's what actually makes a rare item rare. So for instance, if you're going out and staking, you want to stake someone for millions or billions, first of all, it's going to take a very long time for economy to support billion gold stakes. And secondly, if you wanted to stake a billion and you had a party hat set and that's what you were staking as the billion, you're going to find another way to do it, whether or not you have party hats. If you want to stake high-value items, you will stake high-value items, whether it be 20,000 dragon arrows or a party hat. People who want to stake high value will stake high value, and I think that adding these rare items or these discontinued items simply to create this high-value staking item is, again, missing the point. I think that people will stake what they want to stake, and just simply because it's a party hat or a Halloween mask isn't going to change the fact that they're staking high amounts of money. They'll stake GP, they'll stake high amounts of arrows, they'll stake, anything that they can get their hands on to be able to show wealth. And I think for that's the last reason in which I don't think that that's the way we need to be going about it. I do agree that there needs to be a high value item market and a way for people to stake with items and stuff. But I don't think, again, that that's the way to do it. It's going to take a very long time for these items to even be worth it. So you're going to still see people staking. If you're wanting to stake high value items, you're going to be staking dark bows. You're going to be staking whips, third age. These are the sort of things that you're going to be staking as of right now. So now that we've gone through why and why not to have rare items, I just sort of want to wrap up and why my position is what it is, and I want to make it very clear of why I think that rare items are kind of missing the point. And another thing is I want to show, based on this last poll, I want to talk about all the polls that we've had, 1 through 3 of the rare item polls, and sort of describe what problem we're having with these exact questions on the polls. So the first rare RuneScape poll asked the question, do you want rare items to return? And if they do you want the tradable ones to remain tradable, or do you want to make them untradable? And both of these questions passed, so the RuneScape community on the whole wants rare items to return and wants the tradable ones that are in EOC to remain tradable in 2007 Scape. And so this set the precedent for future rare item polls. I don't think there would have been another rare item poll had the introduction poll question failed. If they had said, do you want rare items to return, and it didn't receive 75%, I think they would have scrapped it and no more questions on the subject. But the community overall wants them to return, and that's really why there's still a discussion going on about how to introduce them. So on the second one, the only question that actually passed with the 75% requirement was that tradable rares be given out with community events. And this is pretty interesting to me because obviously there were a lot of questions wondering, how do we introduce these? And to say that the only one that passed was during community events kind of makes me question why they said that, because there's a couple reasons. Saying that it's a community event is sort of ambiguous. I think a way that a lot of people see community events is maybe Jagex hosted community events, so everyone shows up at the duel arena and there's a staking tournament, or these sort of things. Or community events could be Christmas events, Halloween events, these sort of things. So I think that was sort of a silly way to ask the question. I think that it should have been far less ambiguous. And I think if it had been, then that might have not even passed. And so I think that 75% on community events is what encouraged them to release the third poll, asking exactly how they would release these items. So on the third poll, if you notice, really none of these make them rare items. That's sort of the point that I want to be throwing out there about this whole rare item thing, is these aren't going to be rare items. As much as you want there to be high value rare items that are hard to get, this is not the way that it's going to happen. It's not going to happen by making it so that there's a chance for them to drop when you kill a creature. It's not going to happen when you have to go pick it up on the ground. Not going to happen by performing an emote in a certain location. These are not things that are going to make actual rare items. So I think that that's a main reason why not a single question on the third poll has received the 75% requirement. Not a single one. And that's pretty interesting to me. I think another reason that might have happened is because they split up the questions. So when they asked you, how do you want party hats to return, there was 3 separate questions. Party hats to return like this, like this, like this. And that's a problem, because I think a lot of people, even if you thought that, maybe I'll just vote yes on all of them and then hopefully I'll get there, I think a lot of people felt that there should only be one way in which the item comes back. So as I can't prove this, obviously, I think a lot of people probably said yes to one thing and no to the others. And because of that, obviously, it's going to be very hard to receive a 75% acceptance rate on a thing where people are not voting yes for all of them. And so while it shows that these polls show that we definitely want rare items to return, not a single one of these passed. And so really my question to you guys, if you can write down below, is how would you want rare items to return if in any other way? I personally thought that this was one of the best ideas. I loved the rare item poll number 3. And I'll go through that for a couple reasons in a second here. But as for the 3 RuneScape rare item polls, there's going to have to be a 4th one, because obviously none of them pass. So as of right now, we want rares, we want to keep them tradable, and we want them to be given out during community events. And so those are the only 3 questions on all the rare item polls that have actually passed. Now I want to get into, why I think that rare items should return, because here's the weird thing. I want them to return, but I don't think they're going to be rare, and I don't want them to be rare, and I don't want them to be discontinued either. The reason why is because I wouldn't mind them returning for cosmetic effect, but I think there's way too many negative effects of making them discontinued, rare, high-value items, as I've gone through before. So for my personal opinion, I think that the poll 3 was the exact questions that I wanted. I would want to be able to go perform an emote and get my Halloween mask. I would want to be able to go give clockwork for a Santa hat. These are the sort of things that I think would actually be good, because the people that want the items for the cosmetic looking effect would be able to do so, and those who don't wouldn't have to. And I think that's the main reason why I think that they should be added, because a lot of people have been saying, well, you voted for 2007 Scape, and in 2007 Scape, there were rare items. There were discontinued items, and if we don't have them in this game, it's going to be very different from 2007 Scape. While I agree with that, I think the rare items was a huge problem for RuneScape. Because, again, the economic issues, the hacking, the gold scamming, the gold farmers, all of these were huge issues. And another thing you have to keep in mind is that back in the day when these items were first being released, no one thought that they would be discontinued, rare, tradable items that would be worth millions of gold later down the road. No one thought that they would be this kind of item. And so, because of that, now that people realize there's a huge market for discontinued items, there's going to be people stocking up on those things, you know, when they're released, however they're released, if they're monster drops, if they're rare chance from treasure trail items, all these different things. If each person is given one rare each, and then that's it, all of these things are going to encourage people to cheat and spend enormous amounts of money trying to get these things, spend enormous amount of time camping monsters for the drops. And it's going to really negatively impact the community. I think we're all going to be trying to be out for each other, trying to take the items from each other, trying to hoard it all for ourselves. And that's not the kind of thing that we should be going for when we're trying to release these rare items. So from my point of view, I think that they're really cool items. I would love to wear around a party hat, a Santa hat. All these things are pretty cool stuff. But I don't think that they should have the same attraction that they have in the real game, in the sense that they're extremely hard to get, they cost a lot of money, and you have to work and work and work for them. And then at the end of the day, you have a chance of getting hacked, scammed, lured. All these things can happen to make it so that you lose it. And so a common tradable item is more what I would want it. I would want it tradable because I think that it's kind of useful to have it tradable. I don't think that there's any reason to make it untradable if they're common. Because, you know, if you didn't want to go to Draenor Manor, if you're sitting in Castle Wars and you don't want to go over to Draenor and there's this guy that has 20 Halloween masks in his bank, why not let him give you one, you know? And if they're common already, if they're so accessible that all you have to do is go somewhere and do an emote, then making them tradable isn't going to hurt the economy at all. They're probably going to be going for very cheap amounts, you know, 10K max, depending on how hard each item is to get. And it's really not going to hurt the economy in the same way that actual rare items would take. And so the last and final point that I would want to make, especially for those of you who think that rare items should be reintroduced and want them because they want high value, high risk, you know, really good items that maintain their value, that only go up, so they're only a positive investment, there's no way to lose. You're in for a very terrible surprise, in the sense that there's no way that these items are going to be rare at introduction. And it's going to take a very, very long time for these to gain wealth to the sense that you want them. So if you're wanting rare items to be introduced because, oh man, I'm going to get my party hat, hold on to it for a couple months, and then I could sell it for millions, I hate to say it, but that's not going to happen. Everyone is going to be getting these items. Everyone's going to be rushing for them because we already know that they're going to be discontinued or rare in the future. And for that reason, every single person is going to be trying to get as many as possible, unlike the discontinued items back then. Like I said before, there were a lot of people dropping party hats, a lot of people not picking up pumpkins because they were all over the place. It didn't seem reasonable to go ahead and pick up as much as you can. But now people realize these are worth picking up. And so I think for that reason that people are going to hoard these. It's going to be a extremely high value item. And everyone's going to be out to get each other. And I don't think that's very good for our community as a whole. And so I think while I think that the cosmetic effect of the rare items are important, I think that we should be able to wear a Santa hat, to do all this stuff that was available in 2007. I think the negative impacts of having rares in the game were realized by Jagex, and that's really why they stopped doing it until the Squill of Fortune. Now, as for the Squill of Fortune rares, it's obvious why they did that. They realized that discontinued items are in high demand, and they realized that, hey, we can make some money by making people pay for them. And so that's the sort of thing why they would introduce them again. A lot of people were saying, well, Jagex said they would never introduce them again, and then they did. So that means that they realized that discontinued items are important. No, it doesn't. It realized that they realize they can make a lot of money off of discontinued items if they release them for micropayments. And so those are the main reasons why I don't think that rare items should be introduced as rare items, and I don't think they'll ever be rare items. I think we don't have enough time in this game to sort of create this sense of, oh, well, I got my Halloween mask back in 2013, but now that it's 2017 and we're still playing 2007scape, I have all this money now. It's hard to say that that's ever going to happen. So I think that we should create common tradable items, stuff that exactly like the poll questions on number 3, where you do an emote, you pick it up from the ground, you talk to someone, you talk to the wise old man for a party hat. I think that's pretty cool, because you used to say, hey, can I get your hat? And then he'd say, no, why would you think that? This is extremely valuable, But now he'll actually say, yeah, why not? Yeah, I'll give it to you, which is, I think that's pretty cool. It's a cool way of implementing the rare items. And so I think, personally, I would want a lot of the questions on poll number 3 to pass, but they didn't. So I want to ask you guys sort of how you think they should be introduced, if you do think they should be introduced, why you wouldn't want them introduced if you don't, and, sort of create this discussion, because as it is right now, we're kind of at a standstill. Everyone wants rare items, but no one agrees on how to introduce them. And so any cool ideas I'd be really interested in. So thanks again for watching, and go ahead and subscribe, like, comment, and I'll see you again next time.